Always nice to be at the BioStock scene. A lot of familiar faces I see. I'm here to talk about Aptahem today, but before I rush on, forward. Oh, sorry. Always the problem with the mic. Do you hear me? Hello. Do you hear me? I will put it like that then. A little bit funny. So a forward-looking statement, because that's what we need as a public company. We say things for the future that may be affected by other things that we are out of control of. So hence we have this one. Let's see if we can get the microphone a little better. So we are there we go. Swedish biotech company, as I said, and we are public. So we are on the spotlight market, and we are specializing on aptamer-based drugs for the inflammatory and the acute medical conditions. We have one lead candidate, that's the Apta1 candidate. We have more aptamers in our bag. Those are two, but I will come back to them later. As we see ourselves, we have a world-class inflammatory portfolio, and that's based on the patents we have, that's based on the results we have, and also about the fantastic expertise that we have in the company. And some of this expertise is here actually today, so you can ask them after my presentation or in the breaks a little bit more about the technology we have. So, and these are the expertise, and one of these faces, or two or three faces, are here. They're sitting straight in front of me, I see. We have our CSO, Luisa Jedlina here, who was the initiator of the technology we are using today that actually created Aptahem some years back in time. I'm involved in this process as well, but not as much as I would like to be nowadays. I have other chores to take care of, but I'm touching the whole program here and there. We have a medical officer in form of Anders Bylog. He runs the clinical outlook and where to go towards the clinic and the market. And if we look a bit on the lower row, we have Ulriska Olin sitting here also today. She's working very close with Luisa Jedlina in the scientific part and the mechanism of action and so forth. So you can ask her also later. We have Dennis Henriksson. He's a CMC expert. He's looking at the regulatory part and the manufacturing of the aptamers. And he's also teaming up with Thomas Rupp nowadays, which is a new recruitment in Aptahem, and I will come back to him later. I seem to have a lot of problem with this microphone. And Ulf Björklund, a very well-renowned gentleman, oversees the preclinical activities. That means tox preclinical as the regular preclinical efforts that we are doing. As well, in the future now also run the clinic test for us, or at least oversee them. And then Thomas Rupp, how about him? Well, I'm glad to announce that we just recruited this guy, and we also released a article on him today, what he's doing, where he come from. He is one of the leading experts in the world actually on aptamers and how to solve process issues and understand the complex nature of processing aptamers. And I would just say one of these points that you look at here, and that is that he would be our filter or communicator between Aptahem and the manufacturers that we are working with. And it's very important that we get our view and our needs through. It's not always easy when you work with manufacturers to get that. So he's a very welcome power in Aptahem, and he's just released from a lot of contracts, so we just snatched him immediately. We're very happy about that. So, Aptahem, we see ourselves as the only company in Sweden, and if there is someone else doing a therapeutic against sepsis, please step forward. We would like to talk to you, maybe collaborate, so come out if you're there. And globally, I think we're one of a handful actually working on these therapeutic solutions that addresses the sepsis complexity of the inflammatory response that you can see from sepsis. And also, all this together with the expertise we have and fantastic aptamers, we see a first-in-class potential. So, Jonas just mentioned the silent killer, and it is a silent killer because you can get a regular infection bacterial, you can walk around for days and feel, okay, I will take this, and suddenly, boom, it hits you. And then it just rushes on, and it becomes a extremely intensive inflammation. And then you better come into the guardian hands of an acute unit or something, because for each hour that goes from you come in with a sepsis infection, you increase your death possibility with 8%. So it's serious stuff. Can go for a few hours and you're gone. So this is extremely important to think about. If we look at the example I have here, it's Europe and the incidence of sepsis cases and also those who actually die from this. 40%. It's extreme. You have here the example of prostate cancer, what else do I... Yeah, breast cancer, of course, and AIDS. All these together does not measure against the sepsis incidence of death here. That's a serious, serious syndrome that people have to be more and more aware about. Just telling you. I will come back to more about that later. So why is it so serious? Well, it affects the whole system. It is systematic inflammation. That means it targets the whole body system in reacting against this infection. And if you don't treat it in time, you can have problems like a blood pressure deficiency, and that means you have no oxygen in your system and your organ starts to die. And these are the organs that are affected. And usually you talk about kidneys and livers, but look, the brain is actually the one that gets most affected, and that gives you a long recuperating time if you have the possibility to survive a sepsis infection. You should remember that. Cognitive training, many years, it could be lifelong effects on you. You may need a kidney replacement, you may go for dialysis for the rest of your life. So this is nothing to play with. So awareness, be in very, very fast. And all the human suffering, friends, families, job colleagues, whatever, it costs society a lot of money as well. And you see the economical burden that we have from this awful syndrome. And of course, there will be an unmet need as a commercial case, but I will come back to that later. So what did Aptahem do? Well, a couple of years back, we started to get results from our Apta1 lead candidate that showed that it had a fantastic multitasking mechanism. And in the case to... These are not good, I'm so sorry. Oh, there, it's very strong. Okay, sorry, there we go. We could see that this multi-mechanism that this Apta1 candidate had could be used in a better way than we used so far. So we looked around and found the worst case we could come up with, sepsis. And we tried it, and it worked out fantastic. And with the highly big unmet need that there are no real treatments out there for the sepsis condition, especially not in the later stages of a sepsis condition. So that was the trigger for us. And seeing that we have a fantastic multifunctional action on the Aptomer, we went on that. And why is it so fantastic? Well, here's the story. The mosquito, the malaria mosquito, contains parasites, goes into the human brain, and it creates a protein there which glues the blood cells together. And this leads to an agglomeration. In the end, you have a stroke, you die. It's 100% lethal. So the outset of the founders and the researchers in this area, they set out to try to dissolve these agglomerations and also inhibit these agglomerations. And when we early came in this, we saw that there's no really commercial application for these aptamers. So Aptahem CSO looked and turned around this technology and found that it should be more globally applicable on the as a body system. So what she did was that she found a lot of ways how to use this. And what we have done, or what the founders did in the researchers, they made a mold out of this protein with the Aptamer technology. And what they found is that you make a perfect mold with the Aptamer technology. So we have an antibody type of a molecule from this protein. And if you look at this structure, it's quite big. It's 90 base pairs. That means 29,000 grams per mole. That's quite a big sucker of a molecule. So it contains the gluing parts, but it also contains a lot of signaling parts, as you can see, anti-inflammatory, immunostimulant, and anticoagulant. And those are the things we are using in Aptahet's targets. And it's a fantastic molecule. I'm sorry, but okay, I will do it like this. Okay, so here we have a molecule that's fantastic. And we have patented these molecules in a way. Sorry, guys. It irritates me a lot. Can you fix this, please? This is extremely irritating. It's the first time
Hello? Hello?
With a microphone. I can't hold this one. Okay, here we go. Is it off? I'm so sorry. This is not funny at all to have this problem. Okay. this is how it is. Let's hope it works now. I will not move my head too much. So we distill this, this Aptamer technology is protected. We have 3 aptamers, whereof the lead candidate is Apta1. That's the first patent family. We have a second patent family which protects the Apta1 function in the body as a therapeutic use. So I lost my track there. So infection, it fuses the sepsis reaction. Remember, it can be fungi, viral infection, bacterial infection, and most probably heard about bacterial infection, but there are others. And that leads to systematic inflammation. And this systematic inflammation leads to a chaotic imbalance in the system. So the body system totally runs havoc and can't control this inflammatory response. And I already mentioned it. It gives you a severe loss in oxygen blood pressure. That leads to an oxygen deficiency, which will not feed the organs good enough, and they will start to die. And that means the patient will die. Sorry. And I just talked about the organs, and it's a multi-organ dysfunction, as you saw in the earlier parts of the slides there. Okay, so how do we address this? Well, there's 2 scenarios here. Either we let the body take care of this, we have an imbalance in system, and we can balance it with Apta1. And let's start with the left side. If we look at the infection when it occurs and goes into an inflammation, the body tries to fight this inflammation itself, but it cannot take it. So when it goes in to fight the inflammation, it's already too late, so it fights itself. The body starts fighting itself. So it's like if you compare to a car, which get a skid, without the anti-skidding system. I used this before because our CMO, Anders Bülow, have mentioned this, so I should give credit to him for this. Anyway, so you can take the first skid, but the second skid you get out of control. And that's what happens in the body as well. So what we do with Apta1 is that we go in and help the body counterbalance this out of control imbalance and get it back on track. And when we get it back on track, the body can do its work again without having a problem with a chaotic imbalance. So here's the proof. Why do we know we have these effects from Apta1? Yes, we did a lot of testing in animals, in vitro, etc. And what came out? Yeah, we see a dose-dependent survival rate. We can dose in different levels and have different survival rates. And that's fantastic, because then you can point your treatment specifically for each patient, and that's the good thing. Also, that we can do repeated dosing, and meaning repeated dosing is that we can dose in different time zones of the infection. That means we can put in quite a lot of Apta1 to have an effect. And also the fact is that if a patient comes in very late, then we still have a chance to treat that patient. We see effects even later in the stages when we use Apta1. So that's good news. And that we are again back to the silent killer and the awareness that we have to bring into patients. So even if you come in later, should or could be a possibility we could treat. And we see that also by the restored blood pressure. We can follow that the ones treated with Apta1 have a very good restored blood pressure, and that gives oxygen to the system. And when we measure the biomarkers, which you do in a typical clinic or an emergency unit, you see these biomarkers also come back in good shape. So that's 2 strong indications that Apta1 works in a very good way for this systematic inflammation. And recently, we just finalized our first part of the tox study, the preclinical tox studies, and that's the non-GLP study, and it showed very good safety margin. So good that we actually have to spend more substance than we thought. But we have been reading about that in the news anyway. So if you just look at the other unmet need, someone needs to make money out of this. And this is the unmet need for commercialization. And if you look at here, we make an example of Europe 5. You remember the European slide in the beginning? That was whole Europe. This is top 5 Europe and the United States. And here we look at the specific part where you use immunomodulated therapies. And that means that's not antibiotics or anything like that. It's just immunomodulating drugs. And you see here, 32%, 11%. That's not big parts, but it's still enough to make a fantastic market potential if you find the right candidate, which we believe we have. Multi-billion US dollars possibilities here. A little about the timeline for Aptahem at the moment. This is far from complete, of course, and many of these time errors have several other layers of things happening. And I see I have 1 minute left, so I will start to speed up a little. We are still manufacturing more non-GMP, and we will do the GMP manufacturing. We're working on that. We do a lot of preclinical testing outside the tox preclinical testing. That's important to know. And Louisa here and Ulriska, they're doing very big job in this area. And there's 5-6 different actions ongoing. And yeah, we are heading towards phase 1 next year. We announced that it will be during the next second half of 2019. And the MOA studies down there at the bottom, that's the mechanism of action studies, very important. And our scientists have now made a breakthrough. We will like to come back when we have more secure the data we have, but they are very happy about this because it's a real breakthrough, and we will soon want to announce it when we have that clear. This is something what's going on. I have a little time, so I skipped that. Anyway, sorry for the mess with the microphone. I hope you got some information out of it, but we have a super team, we have a super platform in form of knowledge, the people I mentioned, the patents, and we are moving forwards quickly right now. We have a lot of interest from different partner potentials, so we need to deliver as we go. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mikael. Really sorry about that problem with the microphone. It can happen to the best of us.
Glue it to my head next time.
Next time I will.
It's not the first time I have this issue. I don't know. Maybe
I think you might need to cut your hair.
Yeah.
No,
sorry. I just cut my hair. It was like much longer.
Looks great.
I'm gaining towards shorter and shorter.
Now we're using up all the question time talking about your hair. Yeah. Sorry. No, I will say it's obviously that you have created a good team, and you have a really interesting candidate, and you have a huge unmet medical need that you're looking into, which translates into a huge market, of course. I would ask you if the GMP production, we're into that, you talk about production, that's an extremely important part, of course. How have you secured, as a small and in sense virtual company, how have you secured expertise in this area?
Well, I just mentioned it in my presentation, of course, that we just recruited Thomas Rupp, who is a super expert in this area. So that's one step towards it. And we need an in-house control function and expert on that one. It's extremely important to get that done. Otherwise, we're working with a CRO, as you know, since before, BioSpring in Germany. And it's just for us to secure that we get the right deliveries, and it's the top-notch quality that we need. And also, for a really futures outlook, we may just enter ourselves into this area, try to experiment a little, take charge of it, maybe find some new ways how to claim rights in this area. But that's quite far away at the moment.
Speaking of rights, you have recently announced that you're planning to raise 31.7 million in a share issue.
Yep.
What are the time frames for this?
What do you mean by time frame? The time frame for the...
When will it happen, so to speak?
When it will happen? Yeah, well, we have now first of all, we have an extra shareholders meeting the 9th of November, which will hopefully take the decision that we will go into this rights issue. And then this rights issue will start, I don't have the numbers, maybe you have, but in the end of November sometime, and it will end first week in December.
Okay. Yeah. But you actually also have another financing solution in place with Yorkville Advisors. You have a convertible loan deal going on. You wouldn't want to use that for this?
Well, yeah, I think you could think like that. But at the same time, I mean, when we did this, we had some negative comments from the shareholders. So we wouldn't let them out again for this issue. And also, we have a very uneven liquidity in the stock, which makes it tough to run such a setup sometimes. So it has to go, it's like a wave up and down, up and down. So making rights is first serving the shareholders and give them a chance to get in on the game, and also that we secure the money in a better way than waiting for a good liquidity in the share. But it's still a good backup for the company. I mean, if we need to push in some extra, we can do that. But the 20 million or 25 million will not be on the list. And we don't have that long promise either. So.
Okay. Like you said, you have parts of your team here today. We're going to take a quick break now, and I'm sure if anyone wants to ask Aptahem some questions, you can grab them during.
They're hiding there in the middle. Yeah. And then we have the bean counter over there.
The bean counter.
Yeah, the bean counter.
Thank you, Mikael. Great to have you as always.
Sorry about the mess.
No problem.